Hey, Diana, did you know your intake team can make more money for you than your attorneys?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, a podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's going on?
Not much, Mark. How are you doing? Are you ready for Snowmageddon? Or what are we calling it?
Ice-mageddon, something. I don't know what the hell this is. So I've been getting my stuff together. See, I didn't use the S word there. This morning, I went to the doctor. I gave a crap ton of blood to the vampire. So if I say something stupid today, it's because it's just from loss of blood.
You're a little loopy?
Little loopy. And then I went to the local HEB. For those who don't know what an HEB is, that's our local grocery store.
It's the best grocery store chain.
The best grocery store chain in the world. But they also have my prescription. So I go to pick up my prescription, and it is like insanity over there. People are losing their minds. We're going to get maybe 2-3 days of icy whatever.
Yep.
And in Houston, Texas, people freaking lose their mind. I mean, they're hoarding. They're in there hoarding.
What are they hoarding?
Paper products, apparently.
Like toilet paper again?
Yeah.
Are we back to COVID era?
We're back to COVID era, and I don't understand it. I mean, you can't eat it. Anyway, the weatherman says 3 days, and then we'll be back in the 50s and 60s. I'm like,
which is what it's currently at before we get down to a hard freeze here in Houston, Texas, guys, which is a big deal for all of you Northerners making fun of us. We won't get any snow, much to my child's disappointment. But it is mayhem down here in the south.
We're going to get some ice. Okay, we're going to get a ice.
Which is not the fun part of the cold weather.
It is not fun, really.
But we are talking about intake today, which is actually one of our mutually appreciated or mutually favorite topics.
Think so.
Yeah, marketing is for me. And ops, you just pick up your phone and let me run with it. So intake, we both tend to really enjoy.
It is the melding of marketing and operations. It's the hinge point between the two.
It's a lot of fun. You let me play an intake probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You won't still say, I think I have one episode where you said that I actually do run intake at this firm, but only one. The rest of the episodes say that you run intake. But for the last 2 years, I've been involved with working with our highly capable and she's a lot of fun, intake manager, Erica, and kind of just working out the kinks in intake. And it's really given me a new appreciation for it.
So I just got back from the Pilma AI Expo in Orlando. God, everything is Orlando this year. So I was sitting at the bar talking to Carrie Colby-White, who is a vendor that consults on intake and marketing and things like that. And I go, Carrie, my intake manager has a secret girl crush on you. And she goes, you mean Erica? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know you knew Erica. I'm like, oh yeah, I know Erica. I love her. She's so cute.
Well, first of all, that's awesome because all of my girl crushes in the industry don't even know I exist. So that's really cool that, Carrie Colby-White knows Erica, but who wouldn't know Erica? She really knows her stuff. And that's probably actually one of my talking points later. So I'm going to get off of that. Mark, what are we talking about today as it relates to intake?
All right. So I think that our Hey Diana sort of hit the theme on the head, which is my contention. If I had to make a choice between my attorneys and my intake team, I'd take my intake team.
I sure hope your attorneys still don't listen to
this podcast. They
don't listen to this
podcast. The 3 people that listen to this podcast are not, hey, mom and dad. They're not.
And my mom.
Yeah, your mom. That's okay. they don't listen to this podcast. The point being is that our business would have nothing to do. We would sit around and stare at each other all day if it weren't for the Crackerjack intake team that is performing the sales function in this law firm. And as I've said this many times on this podcast, it is basically the launching pad for the success of our law firm, where we went from, half a dozen people now to some 60, 70, 80, depending on how you count them, people and thousands of cases that we handle at any one point in time. It's because somewhere along the line, and I won't take credit for it, but I developed an intake team, an intake process, and I was smart enough to remove the attorneys and the paralegals away from the case sign-up process. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, is kind of the 5 key points on how to set up and run a intake team that will set you free financially.
I'm excited.
All right. With that, we'll be right back, and we're going to go through the 5 biggest levers on how to transform your intake process.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, Diana, we're back. We're going to go through what I have deemed in my own small little bloodless mind today, what I think are the 5 key points of running a good intake process and building a great intake team. And, I look at our people. So how many do we have in our intake department right now, since you're...
Well, including reception, we have about 12.
Okay.
12 to 13.
Managed.
That's what we should be at fully staffed.
Right, fully staffed. And I think maybe we're down 1 or 2 or something like that. But anyway, we it's a team. It's not just a couple of people.
No,
It's-
and they're spread over Texas in various locations.
Yes.
And sometimes, if you consider reception, we've also started to we're experimenting with some offshore resources as well there.
That's true. We do have a few offshore that are helping us with after hours, weekends, overflows, all that fun stuff. It's been a bit of an adventure, but I think we're getting that worked out. But that wasn't one of my key points, but it is good to note.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
Setting the foundation.
Setting the foundation. Sometimes it's an adventure. My thought was, why does your intake department from time to time fail? As a whole, ours is really good. But even as good as ours are, we sometimes fail at what we're trying to accomplish. So I was thinking more, broader term, what other law firms out there are doing, which I think frequently they're using their paralegals, as part-time intake people. But why do intake departments, have structural problems? What do they do wrong from the get-go? And the first thing I came up with was they fail to standardize things. The key thing that I try to strive to explain to my intake department is that we need to do it the same way every single time amongst all of our intake people. In other words, you want to have top-notch service, and it needs to be consistent throughout the whole team, because when we have like 12 different people we're dealing with, you don't want to have one person that's really good at this and one person that's really good at that. You want everybody to be really good at everything, and you want to be consistent. And that starts with your training. That starts with how you set up your intake screens. That starts with how you hold them accountable, how you grade them. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have a new fancy little tool Speed AI that we'll talk about, how we're actually now using it for that exact purpose, is how can we get all of our people on the same page, giving the same message, giving the same, what I'm going to call sales pitch, for lack of a better word. They are a sales department. But it's really important that you be consistent throughout your entire team. And when you see people going off the reservation, you got to call them on it. Now, how do you know this kind of stuff? You got to be recording those phone calls. I think that is one of the key things that a good intake department, that every intake department I know of does, is they're recording their phone calls, and they're having someone, or in our case now with Speed AI, an AI product, listening to those calls and making sure that we are consistent in delivering the same service across the board.
And that's a great preview for the entire podcast, Mark. So let's start with where you started, which is with systems.
Systems. You know you love some systems.
I do. And so I think that, when you talk about, your team sometimes going off the reservations, it's because, as with all systems, things break. And so I think the majority of our listeners probably do have a system and they think it's working well. And so one of the things in terms of systems that I really like that you've implemented in this firm are, like the Take It guidelines. And because, with our Take It guidelines, it's really clear. We're not going to help. It's the red, yellow, green. That's what we call Take It, or guidelines here at the firm. Green, take it all day long. Yellow, you need to send it to an attorney or somebody for review. And red is, I'm sorry, we can't help you. So, for example, at this firm, we do not help do Social Security for minor children. So that, unfortunately, for us is an automatic turn down. And so you systematize how our team helps callers when they call in, so they're not having to make some of those decisions about, do we do this or do we not do this, and leaving callers on hold, which is really, really bad.
Not good customer service.
Not good customer service. And so, we've also utilized technology, and I know you're going to talk about technology here in a little bit, but to help guide our intake specialists along the way on how to ask the questions that we need to qualify the potential client. And Carrie Colby White, she's actually, you were at Pilma, but she does monthly intake trainings. And so sometimes I get to sit in on them when my schedule allows. And one of the things that she says, it's not a call script, it's a call path. One of the things that you're trying to do is still leave the humanity in, because obviously most of our listeners, you've got just high touch clients, whether that's personal injury, estate planning, clients who are going through a really likely a rough time. And so you don't want to sound very robotic or even like an AI agent. You want to sound like a human. And so therefore, if you allow for the art and the science, is I guess my point.
Right. One of the things I wish that we could do is eliminate the need for our intake specialists to have to type in the answers, because that really, when you listen to the recordings, that really sort of chops up the flow of the conversation. They'll ask a question, then they'll wait 20 seconds while they're typing in the answer, and then ask. And I'm like, boy, if we could get a system where the AI agent that's listening to the conversation can just automatically take that information down and fill it in the appropriate blanks. And your intake specialist, and they're really good when they can get the flow going, is just to have that conversation with them, and not have to sit there and stop and hack and type and blah, 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 blah. And I just noticed that listening to some calls. Your operations, go find me one of those.
Find you a new tool.
Go find me a toy.
It's crazy because, Mark, if you guys are a regular listener, you know that Mark had an incredible experience with an AI agent that he just can't get over the other day. And one of the things that you told us was that she actually kept her little typing and chatter in the background on your little AI. So there's got to be something about the typing that is both assuring to the listener there has to be something there, or else I don't know why AI would have kept it.
Yeah. So I think the point we're saying is we need to systematize, and I think the point we'd make is you can't scale chaos. You can only scale systems. And like I said, we didn't start out with 12 intake people. We started off with 1, then we had 2, and then we had 3, and so forth and so forth, and we scaled up the process. But trying to scale chaos is
no, it's
not
a fool's
fun.
Errand.
That's a fool's errand. It's not fun.
And hopefully no one's doing that.
All right. So step 1, standardize the intake process. The second lever is to leverage technology in the right way. And the thought here is that your customer relations management software, your CRM system, which we use Litify, Filevine, I can't think.
Smart Advocate.
Smart Advocate, all of those, CRM systems out there. They don't fail. The usage of those systems is what fails. So using your technology correctly, I think, is the key to really nailing the intake process. Messy data leads equals lost leads, bad decisions. The automation that we're trying to establish only works if we have some discipline in the system and in the process. Stupid example. I used to have an intake person that used to type in all caps. Okay, excuse me, that's not how this works, because now you've just screwed up every form that we spent a lot of money integrating into our CRM system. No, initial cap on the first, middle, and last name, and then everything else is just like you're typing up an English paper. So standard operating procedures, on how you use your technology, how you use your data entry. Clean data equals visibility, which equals control, and that's what you want in your system. Is you want your technology to work for you. You want to leverage the technology. You told me this yesterday. I think it was you that told me this, that technology, if you leverage it correctly, is a force multiplier, but technology used badly is a bad outcome multiplier.
Yeah, so that was Daniel.
That was Daniel. That's right. It was
coach.
You were on the conversation. But
I was in the call. I thought he was going to say, I think technology magnifies your bad habits.
That's a better way of saying what he said.
Well, I think it's a different point, but is that your point? That
is my point.
Yeah.
An error. If you put an error in the technology at the beginning, that error is going to just keep creeping through the system throughout the lifetime of the engagement. You've leveraged a mistake in the wrong direction. So anyway, Daniel's brilliant. That's why we pay him lots of money. Daniel, we know Daniel listens too.
Daniel's great. So he's an excellent find. Mark, I think that one of the things that we just need to remember about intake is that we're trying to, to your point, standardize the client experience. Just because you call and you get, Erica, doesn't mean that you should, just get years of experience versus one of our newer intake specialists and, notice all of a sudden that you're not getting all of the top 5-star quality customer service that we're known for. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about standardizing the client experience, I think that one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is get the data that's most important to the client in the system correctly the first time. So we try very hard not to talk about what we do here because it can get a little bit not as fun for all the other practicing attorneys. But for our law firm, which is a disability law firm, guys, obviously the client's disabilities are the most important thing. I'm hopefully not sharing state secrets here. So whenever a client calls in and says, I'm filing for disability because of these 5 conditions, and then they have to tell operations again that they're filing for disability for the same 5 conditions, it is not good.
They hate repeating themselves.
They do not like repeating themselves.
Them.
They don't feel heard. They don't feel like, did you not get it the first time? Like, did you not hear me? Like, these are the things that's the whole reason I'm here and you didn't get my stuff. So what we're trying to do is make sure when you're leveraging technology is that you're not missing those key things. And then, because we are a disability law firm with a small mass torts practice, if you do, on the flip side,
www.disabilitydenials.com. We do pay referral fees where appropriate.
We're allowed.
We're allowed.
There you go.
I just wedged in the commercial.
Allowed.
I wedged in the commercial.
I noticed you did that. The fun side of getting good data in your system is that I say fun. That's probably not appropriate. Oh, well, don't ding me for my lack of compassion, but you can then use your data to help you mine for, additional mass torts or anything that if you're setting up a new practice area, it can help you if you have the right metrics, right? Like the right age, the right maybe zip code and those types of things. It allows you to mine your data, which is very important in this day of first party data.
Yes. Now, Since we do have a mass tort section, and most of our clients come to us with some sort of medical problem, they're on some sort of drug, they're on some sort of medical device, there's some special circumstance. That has been one of the ways that we've really leveraged our intake system, is because we can go back and data mine. So, for example, when the Camp Lejeune litigation popped up, three years ago, somewhere around that, we were able to go back and look at our system that had 20,000 people in there, and we were able to figure out, the Navy and the Marine Corps veterans that had served at Camp Lejeune, because we had the data. We had the data, and they were our clients, so we could legitimately call them up and say, we know exactly what your condition is. A condition fits with one of the parameters, of what we're screening for within the Camp Lejeune litigation. And we signed up a lot of cases that way simply because we had good data.
And before we leave the technology segment, I can't say enough. I know you talked about CRMs, but I would say integrated phone systems into your case management softwares is essential, because, like, for example, the vendor that we use now has an AI transcript option. So it allows, for easier summary, for the call recordings we're going to talk about here in a little bit, for quality control. But basically, the AI transcript helps your people from having to just say, wait, what did we talk about? What are my action items again? And it's all right there, because you have the integrated phone system. So just make sure that your phone and your case management software work together.
Right. So number 3 on my list, this shouldn't be shocking, is continuous training. It's not a one and done type thing. I continuously insist that my people go over some of the basics over and over again. And I've touted this on the podcast before, and actually have given it out as a freebie on this podcast. And I'll do it again today, if you remind me at the end, is our sales training manual. Mm-hmm. We train on that all the time. Now, if you will remember The Wolf of Wall Street, the movie, which had Leonardo DiCaprio and Nicole Kidman in it. Great movie. I'm not a big movie buff, so I miss a lot of movies, but this one I happened to see and I really liked it. Anyway, the character that movie was written about wrote a book called The Straight Line Selling Method. That was his whole stick in the whole movie, is he could sell anything. He could sell you a pencil. There's a methodology to getting people to yes. And we use that methodology with our sales team to get people to hire us as their attorney. Now, admittedly, our sell is an easy sell because we're a contingency fee law firm. All we're trying to do is get people to sign on the dotted line. I'm not trying to get them to stroke a check or anything like that. That's infinitely harder thing to do. So they're already halfway sold when they call us, generally speaking. But to get them over the line, we have a very specific methodology that we train our intake staff to use. And what it's all about is it's about getting to yes. And if you can't get to yes, figure out what objection they have that's keeping them from getting to yes once you qualify the lead. And that's a real simplified way of explaining the methodology. But we train on that constantly. And so we're always looking about how to deal with objections that come up. And most objections that come up are very consistent. But there's always occasionally a new one that comes up that we hadn't thought about. So we train, I always ask people, what are some new objections that you've heard to yes that you hadn't thought of before? Let's work through it. Let's brainstorm through it. Let's come up with some ideas on how you can meet that objection, get past that objection, and get to yes. But that doesn't work if you don't constantly train on it.
Well, because I think what the training is doing is creating confidence in the intake specialist, right? Because, what we're trying to get our intake specialists to do is exude confidence. We want them to make sure that when the potential client calls, they automatically feel assured that we even give them the language. You've called the right place. We can help you with that. Because what you're trying for both parties to do is create confidence, which will create trust between the two. And so what you're trying to do is build trust within the first few moments of that call. And you can't do that if your intake specialist is either rushed or is like stumbling around with either the technology or, okay, what do I say next? That's, I think, the art part of it is, oh, wait, did I not follow the script exactly? But also understanding, okay, this is where I go when they say this. One of the things that, one of the trainings that I love that Intake did with one of the consultants you hired for them, but that I think would be beautiful for ops, and I will do that this year. I've been putting it off, but I will do that this year, is the compassionate interruption training. Because we want, obviously, to be compassionate, but also at the same time, we want them to be efficient with their time. If we want to be able to help, we need to say no quickly. A short no is better than a long maybe. And so I think that that's maybe something that we just need to keep in mind with when we speak with our potential clients. And so they can only do that if they have the confidence to interrupt compassionately.
Right. And so one of the things we do is we do role play. And again, trying to get our people confident in the certain things we want to do. So one of the things we've emphasized lately is what we call the one call close, which I think probably Carrie Colby White has probably been preaching that to Erica, and a lot of people have been preaching that lately. But the whole ideal is you want to close the client in one call, not having to call them back later, not having to chase them later, not having them wander off. You want to shut it down right there. Number one, it locks them in. Number two, it saves your intake team a ton of time by not having to keep following up and following up. And it gets the case moving faster. Then we can transfer the case over to operations, and they can do their onboarding, and then we're off and running. I've had pushback from a lot of my people, especially people who have been around a long time, when we started pushing the one call close. And we had to explain to them, this is better for you. This is why this is a good thing. It saves you time. It's better for the client because it gets the client moving down the road. We know we're the best disability law firm in town, so we know they're at the right place. Now, getting the client to realize they're at the right place, that sometimes takes a little bit of doing. And what I found out is they lacked the confidence to do the one call close. They thought it was kind of pushy. They thought that maybe they needed to give the client a little bit of time to think about it. And it really just came down to, we needed to do a lot of role playing where we had them repeat the key phrases over and over again until they felt comfortable saying those particular words out of their mouth. And as soon as we did that, boom, you should have seen Dee this week, 14 one call closes in a week. And she never used to have any.
Wow. 14
in 1 week. That is some serious turnaround. Dee, I know you're not listening, but if you were, you did a hell of a job. So it can be done, but you just have to, train them, explain why it's important, explain why it's actually beneficial to them in the long run. The fourth one, the use of visual and audio tools. So written SOPs, a lot of people don't do well just reading a sea of words. They need to see it. They need to hear it. So this is why we play people's calls back to them, and not just their own calls, but we play, like if we see a call that went really well, we will play that to everybody and use it as a training tool. This is how it's supposed to be done. If we see one that went badly, now typically we don't play our own bad calls in front of everybody because we don't want to embarrass anybody, but we will play it back to that person individually. You did this, and that's not exactly how this is supposed to go, but actually hearing it. Just like this podcast. I think I say some things, and then I listen to this podcast later like, I said that? What the hell? I'm thinking, why didn't you stop me?
Yeah, I don't know. Because I can't stop you. I can't predict all the things you're going to say.
Well, you oughta. Anyway, so people need to hear these things. They also need to see it. I'm a big believer in flow charts. So the straight line selling method, we've put together a visual flow chart to show people how we're going to get from here to here to here. Here's a decision tree. We're either going to go up this decision tree or down this decision tree or whatever. But we make it visual for them so they can sort of understand it and see it. I also do it for the client. So we've created some client handbooks that have visual flow charts, which basically show them how the disability process works. And I say we created it. I stole them from Thomas Bush many, many years ago. We call it the Bush Book. It's actually a book by James Publishing called The Social Security Disability Practice by Thomas Bush, but we call it the Bush Book. And we use it for training. And one of the great things about Thomas Bush is he's very generous, and he created all of these things. And by virtue of buying the book, you get a license to use it in your own materials, which I thought was very generous of him. So very, very lovely man. I haven't seen or heard from him in years. I hope he's still alive. I'm not sure if he is.
Mark, when you think about visual and audio, I am, as I am a huge fan of looms. Looms.
Yes, looms. I love looms.
The team they roll their eyes when I say the word loom, but and we require all of our consistently used processes to have a screen recording at this point. They then go into Waybook so that they're all in one location, which is MWA University.
Okay, for those who are not viewing this, who are listening to it, explain Waybook.
Waybook is our online training platform. So it has quizzes, AI-generated quizzes, as well as all of our training materials. And so intake, Eric has done a great job of creating our intake training Waybook by practice area so they can listen to good calls, bad calls, but also have screen recordings on how to actually navigate the system and use the case management software to proceed through the intake based on the call.
So they can see or hear what great looks like.
See and hear.
See, yeah. All right, now you gotta pimp out MWA University because I got the sweatshirt on now.
It's you're literally wearing it, and those are more or less your initials.
Okay, MWA, Marc Whitehead Associates. That's around here. That's what we refer to the firm as. Everybody says I work at MWA. So when we did Waybook, I got the bright idea that we're going to name the whole process MWA University. And now we have sweatshirts, which are really cool swag. Everybody that I see is asking me for one of these cool MWA University sweatshirts.
They're very nice. Thank you for the Christmas present.
Yes, and we have it. It's designed to look sort of like the Harvard logo, and it has Latin in it. And the big drinking game is to try to get strangers to figure out what the Latin on my shirt says. So
you have much different outings than I do.
Get a few espresso martinis in me, then I can go a long way with that.
I'm sure you could. So, Mark, before we leave the fourth lever, what is your favorite audio or visual training tool?
I like to have them listen to good calls. Hearing a good call, hearing a proper one-call close, I think is probably the most beneficial thing that we can do for them. But then this step 2 is now have them repeat it back to you. Role play. All right, that's how we like it done. Now let's role play. Pretend I'm a client and let's start. And let's role play it. I want you to do it like that. And that builds up their confidence. All right, we're moving on. My fifth lever. What gets measured gets fixed. You have to keep excellent statistics. You have to keep excellent data to see how things are running. And we measure and we try to optimize relentlessly. Most firms don't know their intake numbers. I remember in 2012 when I first started an individual intake department and hired somebody to be that first intake person. She asked me what my numbers were. I had no idea. I didn't have a clue. I knew nothing. I had no system to keep track of it. We got out a pencil and paper and a spreadsheet and just tried to recreate the prior year based on data. It took Melanie, go ask Melanie about this. It took us a whole week to recreate the data from one year to see what our intake numbers really look like. And the holes that I found once I looked at that data over a year were shocking. Just absolutely shocking.
Well, and so for any of our listeners that might find themselves in the same position you were at that point, when you say most firms don't know their intake numbers, which numbers are you speaking of, Mark?
Okay. So first off, Your raw numbers. When a lead comes into the system, okay, so in our world, we use Litify, which is a Salesforce product. That is our CRM system. So leads come into the system in basically one of two or three ways. Number one, there's a phone call, which is recorded via the Litify system via one of our intake specialists. The second way a lead comes in is through, I think the word is an API interface with one of our contact forms. So some form on the internet or on social media somewhere where somebody fills out a form and the magic fairies push it into the Litify system.
Are you just putting words together now, Mark?
I am.
Okay.
So, okay, operations, tell me how it works.
Well, I'm not pretending to know how it works. I was just curious.
I just said magic fairies. It's magic fairies.
API interface via our web forms, I believe.
Now, I think that's pretty close to being accurate.
It's actually not that bad.
I don't think that's that bad.
It's not that. I mean, it's okay. It's a solid B.
I'm not a tech nerd. I don't know.
I'm just impressed that you tried.
I don't speak the lingo.
So what happens with these magic fairies?
Okay, so the magic fairies are supposed to record every single lead that comes into our system from whatever source. Okay, so that's your top of the funnel. Okay, I know a lot of people have heard a lot about top of the funnel. You want to measure how many of those we actually did a full interview, a full screen, to see if they're qualified or not. Now, that full screen could be 2 minutes, which is, I need a criminal lawyer. Oh, yeah, we don't do criminal law. Here's a number. Thank you. Now, we are recording that information so we can market to that person. You always capture that information. But the point is that could be an example. The problem, and here's where the leakage is that we don't get to interview 100%. And I don't know any firm that interviews 100% of the leads that come into their system, unless they have hardly any leads. I think roughly there's about, right now, if I looked at the stats lately, we have about a 5% drop-off. So about 5% of the leads that come into the system, we never get to fully interview. In other words, they wander off. We can't reach them. We'll call them 10 times and they just don't call us back. We'll text them, whatever. We're chasing that lead, and quite frankly, spending a lot of resources chasing all of these leads, but we never get all of them. Now, I will tell you that most intake specialists or intake consultants will tell you if you can reach 95% of the leads that come through your system, you're doing pretty good. There's always room for improvement, but that's not too far off of industry standards. Now, for people who call us, the standard should be way higher than 95%. But the reality is a lot of people fill out the form on the website or fill out a social media form, and then you just can't, they're hard to track down. So that's the first one is what is your contact rate? What is your rate that you're actually interviewing people? Then the second stat that you need to know is what is your want rate of the people that you actually talk to. How many of them do you actually want? How many of them meet your criteria? And then of the ones that you do want, how many of them are you successful in getting them to sign your contract, to get them to hire you? And that's another stat that's kind of, that we talk a lot about at PILMA and things like that, is usually the consultants will say, you want to sign up somewhere around 92, 93% of your wants. If you're signing up 92, 93% of the cases that you actually want, that's pretty decent. Again, the room for improvement, but, that's not too bad. If you're only signing up 60% of your wants, that's really, really bad. You are leaving an incredible amount of money on the table. So the point is, you need to know these things before, you can't just guess at them. You really need to know these things. And if you don't track them properly, we've had this problem. And this was a training issue where intake specialists, if a client didn't sign, they didn't classify it as a no sign. They would just reclassify it as we didn't want that anyway. Well, no. Now you're monkeying with the numbers. And we had to fix that problem. So it's real important that your people track things accurately. That's what our intake manager is supposed to do, is to make sure that people are not screwing with those numbers.
Yep, and Erica, she's just great about finding those little loopholes. She was once an intake specialist, so that is one of the great things, kind of, that she knows all the loopholes that they'll try to find. And so the statistic or the KPI that we started really focusing on last year, Eric and I, was our attorney review stage. So know where your leads are falling off, I guess would be the,
Right.
would be the
Where's
statistic
the fall off
that
at every
I,
level in the funnel?
well, that I, yep, particularly with attorney review, because, that tends to obviously be the yellow category. We're going back to our take it guidelines, and that's the yellow.
Yeah, again,
it literally
somehow
goes to attorney.
the attorneys get in the middle of it and screw it all up.
Or it's back in the handoff, right? So one of the things that I've said on this podcast a million times is that, where the handoff is the most important part of the relay. So it's going from intake to the attorney and from the attorney back to the intake team. Who's dropping the ball there? And it's definitely going to take some time. And so if you know where your wanted leads are not converting at which stage, and focus on that. So
here's an interesting tip that Gary Falkowitz, an intake consultant that I have used in the past, friend of mine up from, I think he's in Long Island, New York. He actually advocates having an attorney within the intake department.
I remember this.
Either as that's their full-time job, or maybe have your attorneys rotate through and spend a day or a week in the intake department. That would really piss them off if you told everybody every Monday you're in the intake department all day. So there's an attorney just sitting there dealing with these things and answering these questions in real time. I have not been so cruel as to do that to my attorneys. I don't think he's wrong. I do think because of the nature of the work we do as a disability firm, it's not as critical that we do that. If I was in a high-end PI firm where the stakes are on any individual case are a lot bigger, I think I would strongly consider having an attorney down in my intake department.
Well, just to keep them from becoming a bottleneck, really, the
Right,
main reason, right?
right.
Yeah. So, all right, Mark, how are we going to close out?
Okay, well, I think my last thought there is if you don't measure intake, you're just guessing. So measure your stats. So when we come back, we are going to give you our action steps going forward in how to shore up your intake process.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. Remember, Mark is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
All right, Diana. So our action steps going forward on how to improve your intake process. And note I said improve your intake process, not improve your intake team, because I know there's a lot of people out there who don't have a team. They may have one person, or they may have a couple of people splitting the duty. This is frequently what I see is attorneys will have their paralegals screen the leads. Okay, well, your paralegals are busy. And the problem with that is that when your paralegals are really busy, they may not want you to take on any more cases, and they may turn down good cases. I would hope your paralegal wouldn't do that to you, but just in case, always be careful. So we've moved away from that paralegal model, but I will bet that a good chunk of the people out there still use their paralegal or some paralegal type person in their firm to do their intake. But anyway, so when I say the word intake process, intake team, I'm kind of using the phrase interchangeably there. I would say number one is document one intake workflow everyone must follow. Just pick one, start with one, which is, I would say the simplest one would be to document a decision tree on the type of case that you're fishing for, okay? You're doing auto PI, very simple. What's the decision tree? I need to know, was there an injury? Who is the party? Who was at fault? What is the statute of limitations? Are we within the statute of limitations? And it would be nice to know if there's likely to be any insurance involved. That's your decision tree. And once you go through that qualification process that you have now lined out, very simple little process, that's an automatic sign, okay? You can investigate the facts later. That's an automatic sign. For us, our decision tree is on a Social Security claim as we go through what's called the 5-step sequential evaluation process, which I'm not going to explain here. But suffice it to say that, as I said earlier, we use Thomas Bush's decision tree matrix for how those decisions are made. But come up with that initial process, that initial decision tree. So you can delegate that initial decision to someone that is not an attorney and hopefully, maybe not your paralegal. Okay. That would be number one.
So my takeaway number 2, Mark, would be to audit your case management software usage and then make sure you're getting good data in. Like just good data in, or else you won't get good data out, which basically means that, ultimately what we're talking about here, guys, is your marketing spend, right? We want to know which marketing source is bringing in the best sources, the most qualified sources, or whichever way you want to gauge how you spend your marketing dollars. If you're not even getting the correct, and I know there's last touch attribution, all kinds of different ways that we can track it now. But if we're not getting good data in, we're not going to make smart decisions on our marketing. And you're going to increase the frustration on the client side as well when you transfer to ops and they have to repeat the whole thing all over again. So just make sure that you're using technology the best way possible with your CRM, your case management software.
Right. Let the CRM track your lead source attribution as best as it can. It's never perfect. Just like asking your client where they heard your name is never perfect, but it's a good start. So let the data work for you. Number 3 is schedule recurring intake training. Put it on the calendar now. Training is one of those things that can just slack off and fall off, especially when people get busy. And the only way to save it is to calendar it out now. We definitely try to calendar it out, several months into the future. And I try to be involved in the training process with the intake department, but I'm not the exclusive person that does their training. If I was, then they would be miserably, woefully undertrained because my calendar doesn't allow me to be as consistent. But as long as it's on their calendar, if it's not me doing the training, it'll be Erica doing the training, or they can self-train. They can give each other role play. There's a lot of ways that you can do it, but you got to get it on the calendar and you got to be consistent with it.
Yeah, one of the great things Erica did was make that part of their level 10 meeting is incorporate a training moment into each of their level 10 meetings, which I think was brilliant. So my takeaway number 4, Mark, would be to make sure you're recording and then reviewing those calls. And so I know those seem daunting for people who either don't have a dedicated tech person and or the funds to do all that. So the tech now, if it's recording, is probably creating an AI transcript. So just make sure you go ahead and splurge for that little adder if it is an additional adder. Listen to the call and at some point say, okay, here, this is where the call either went off the rails, or here, this is where she saved it. Here, this is where we would have extended the one call close. They're excellent training materials. So just make sure you're not only utilizing that you're not only implementing the technology, but that they're utilizing the results from their end.
With that, I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, remember to rate and review it wherever you get your podcast, and hit that share button. Share it with your fellow overworked lawyers who might need a little kick in the pants or a little inspiration. Come on, let's get the listenership up. So for more episodes and resources, visit us at successfulbarrister.com, and be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability law firm, at www.disabilitydenials.com. And remember, let's build a practice, not a prison. Bye.
Bye.